The shattering of glass pierced the silence of our living room. A framed photo lay smashed on the hardwood floor, the shards of glass glinting like tiny daggers. My hands trembled as I stared at the intruder standing before me, a woman clutching the hand of a young boy, his eyes wide with confusion. Richard, my husband of 23 years, stepped forward, his face ashen. "Dana, this is Jenna, and Lucas. They're my family, too." The words hung in the air, a suffocating weight pressing against my chest. I opened my mouth, but no sound escaped. How could this be happening? My perfect life, the life I had fought so hard to build, was crumbling before my eyes. "You have another family?" I finally managed to choke out, my voice barely above a whisper. "How could you do this to us?" Richard's gaze dropped to the floor, unable to meet mine. "I'm sorry, Dana. I never meant for it to go this far." Jenna shifted uncomfortably, her grip on Lucas tightening. "Richard told me you knew about us. He said you were okay with the arrangement." My heart pounded in my ears as I struggled to comprehend the depth of his deception. Anger surged through me, burning away the shock. "You lied to her, too? You're a coward, Richard, a coward and a liar!" Amelia, our 22-year-old daughter, emerged from her bedroom, her eyes wide with confusion. "Mom, what's going on?" Before I could respond, Richard stepped forward, his hands raised in a placating gesture. "Amelia, honey, I have something to tell you." "Save it," I snapped, my voice trembling with rage. "You've done enough damage. Get out of our house, Richard. Get out and never come back." Amelia's brow furrowed, and she looked from me to Richard, her gaze finally settling on Jenna and the child. Understanding dawned on her face, and her expression hardened. "You sick bastard," she spat, her words dripping with venom. Richard flinched as if struck. "Amelia, please, let me explain." "No," I shouted, my voice raw. "You don't get to explain anything. You've been living a lie, and now the truth is out. You made your choices, Richard, and now you have to face the consequences." Jenna's grip on Lucas loosened, and she took a tentative step forward. "Dana, I'm so sorry. I had no idea." I held up a hand, cutting her off. "Just go. Take your son and get out of my house. I don't want to see either of you ever again." Tears welled in Jenna's eyes, but she nodded, her shoulders slumping in defeat. She turned and fled, Lucas trailing behind her, casting one last bewildered glance over his shoulder. Richard stood motionless, his face a mask of anguish. "Dana, please, we can work through this. I love you." I shook my head, my heart shattering with each word. "No, Richard. You lost the right to love me the moment you betrayed our family. Our marriage is over." As the weight of my words settled over us, a heavy silence descended. In that moment, I knew that nothing would ever be the same again. The life I had known, the love I had cherished, was gone, shattered like the broken frame on the floor. The weeks following Richard's departure were a blur. Amelia and I existed in a state of numb disbelief, the weight of his betrayal suffocating us with each passing day. We tried to resume our normal routines, but the empty spaces he left behind served as constant reminders of the life we had lost. One evening, as I sat at the kitchen table, staring vacantly at a stack of unpaid bills, Amelia emerged from her room, her eyes red-rimmed and puffy. "Mom, we need to talk," she said, her voice quivering with barely contained anger. I looked up, my heart sinking at the expression on her face. "What is it, honey?" Amelia tossed a thick manila envelope onto the table, scattering the bills. "I found this in Dad's office. It's everything. Bank statements, credit card receipts, proof of his double life." I reached for the envelope with trembling hands, dread coiling in my stomach. As I rifled through the contents, a sickening realization dawned on me. Richard hadn't just been unfaithful. He had been embezzling from his company, siphoning funds to support his secret family. "That bastard," Amelia spat, her fists clenched at her sides. "He's been lying to us for years, Mom. He's been stealing, cheating, and God knows what else." I felt bile rise in my throat as the full extent of Richard's deception became clear. "How could he do this to us?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. Amelia's expression hardened, her eyes blazing with determination. "He's going to pay for this, Mom. We're going to make sure he pays." I stared at her, uncertainty gnawing at me. "What are you saying, Amelia?" She leaned forward, her gaze unwavering. "I'm saying we expose him for the lying, thieving scumbag he is. We take all this evidence to his company, to the police. We burn his life to the ground, just like he did to ours." A part of me recoiled at the thought of such vengeance, but another, darker part couldn't deny the appeal of seeing Richard suffer the consequences of his actions. "What about Jenna and the kid?" I asked, my voice trembling. "They're caught up in this, too." Amelia's expression softened, just for a moment. "We'll reach out to Jenna. Maybe she'll see reason and help us take him down." I nodded slowly, my mind whirling with 1,000 different thoughts and emotions. "Okay," I said finally, my resolve hardening. "We'll do it. We'll make him pay for what he's done." Amelia's grim smile sent a shiver down my spine. "Good. It's time we showed that lying piece of garbage what happens when you mess with the Whittaker women." As she turned and stalked back to her room, I couldn't help but wonder if we were embarking on a path we might one day regret. But in that moment, all I could feel was a burning desire for retribution. A need to see Richard suffer as we had suffered, to make him pay for the lies that had shattered our lives. In the days that followed, I found myself standing at a crossroads, torn between the desire for vengeance and the fear of diving headlong into a path of destruction. As I pored over the evidence Amelia had uncovered, the weight of Richard's betrayal threatened to crush me. Amelia, however, remained resolute, her determination unwavering. "We can't let him get away with this, Mom," she insisted, her voice laced with urgency. "He needs to face the consequences of his actions." I nodded numbly, my mind a whirlwind of conflicting thoughts and emotions. A part of me longed to see Richard suffer, to watch as his carefully constructed facade crumbled around him. But another part, the part that still clung to the remnants of the love I once felt, recoiled at the thought of such vindictiveness. "What if we go too far?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "What if we become the monsters we're trying to destroy?" Amelia's expression softened, and she reached across the table to grip my hand. "Mom, we're not the ones who created this mess. We're just fighting to reclaim what's ours, our dignity, our self-respect. Richard is the one who chose to lie and cheat. He's the monster here." Her words resonated deep within me, igniting a spark of determination that had been flickering dangerously close to extinguishment. She was right. Richard had brought this upon himself, and it was time he faced the music. "You're right," I said, squeezing her hand. "We can't let him get away with this. We need to take him down, once and for all." Amelia's eyes gleamed with a mixture of relief and anticipation. "Good, then let's get to work." Over the next few days, we pored over the evidence, meticulously piecing together a timeline of Richard's deceit. Bank statements, credit card receipts, and damning emails painted a picture of a man consumed by greed and selfishness, willing to sacrifice everything, including his family, for his own desires. As we worked, I could feel the anger simmering within me, a slow burn that threatened to consume me if left unchecked. Each new revelation, each fresh betrayal, stoked the flames of my fury until I could barely contain the rage that coursed through my veins. Finally, we had everything we needed, a damning dossier of Richard's misdeeds, a veritable mountain of evidence that would bury him beneath the weight of his own lies. "It's time," Amelia said, her voice steely with determination. "Time to make that bastard pay." I nodded, my jaw clenched tight. Yes, it's time to end this, once and for all. As we stood there, united in our quest for retribution, I knew there was no turning back. Richard had made his choices, and now he would face the consequences, no matter how steep the price. With our dossier of evidence against Richard firmly in hand, Amelia and I knew it was time to take action. We couldn't move forward alone, not if we wanted to ensure Richard faced the full weight of his crimes. "We need help," Amelia said grimly, her fingers drumming against the tabletop. "Legal help." I nodded, my stomach churning with a mixture of apprehension and anticipation. "You're right. We'll need an attorney, someone who can navigate the legal system and make sure Richard can't wriggle his way out of this." Amelia's eyes narrowed, her jaw set in a hard line. "I know just the person." A few days later, we found ourselves seated across from Samantha Kendrick, a no-nonsense attorney with a reputation for taking on high-profile cases. As we laid out the evidence before her, her expression remained inscrutable, betraying none of the shock or disgust we had expected. "This is quite a dossier," she said at last, her voice calm and measured. "If even half of these allegations are true, your husband is in deep trouble." Amelia leaned forward, her eyes blazing with intensity. Every single word is true, Miss Kendrick. That lying, cheating scumbag has been deceiving us for years, stealing from his company to fund his double life. Samantha held up a hand, silencing Amelia's outburst. I believe you, Miss Whitaker. But belief alone won't be enough to convict your husband. We'll need concrete evidence, a paper trail that leaves no doubt as to his guilt. I nodded, my heart pounding in my chest. We understand. What do you need from us? Over the next few weeks, Samantha guided us through the process of collecting additional evidence, ensuring that every I was dotted and every T was crossed. Her meticulous attention to detail was both reassuring and unsettling, a constant reminder of the gravity of the situation we found ourselves in. As our case against Richard grew stronger, Amelia and I faced another hurdle, the question of what to do about Jenna and her son, Lucas. They were collateral damage in Richard's web of lies, innocent victims caught up in his selfish scheme. We should reach out to her, Amelia said one evening, her voice laced with a surprising note of compassion. She might be willing to help us, especially if it means protecting Lucas. I hesitated, unsure of how to proceed. What if she's loyal to Richard? What if she refuses to cooperate? Amelia's expression hardened. Then we'll have to find another way. But we owe it to ourselves and to her to at least try. In the end, Jenna proved to be an unexpected ally, her anger and hurt at Richard's deception eclipsing any lingering loyalty she might have felt. She provided us with a wealth of information, corroborating our evidence and filling in the gaps in Richard's carefully constructed lies. As the final pieces fell into place, a sense of grim determination settled over us. We had done everything in our power to ensure that Richard would face the consequences of his actions, no matter how painful or devastating they might be. It's time, Samantha said, her voice quiet but resolute. Time to bring him down. Amelia and I exchanged a glance, a silent understanding passing between us. There was no turning back now. The wheels of justice had been set in motion, and Richard's world was about to come crashing down around him. As the days ticked by, a sense of foreboding settled over our household. Despite our meticulous preparations, a nagging doubt lingered in the back of my mind. What if Richard somehow managed to evade justice? What if, after everything we'd been through, he still found a way to escape the consequences of his actions? Amelia, ever the voice of reason, brushed aside my concerns with a wave of her hand. He's not getting away this time, Mom. We've got him dead to rights. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't quite right. It was as if a storm was brewing on the horizon, and we were caught in its inexorable path. My fears were confirmed one evening when Samantha called, her usually unflappable demeanor replaced by a sense of urgency. We may have a problem, she said without preamble. I've received word that your husband is planning to flee the country. The news hit me like a punch to the gut, stealing the breath from my lungs. What? When? How? Samantha's voice was grim. From what my sources tell me, he's been liquidating assets and making arrangements to leave the country within the next few days. He's taking Jenna and the boy with him. Anger surged through me, hot and pulsing. The coward was running, trying to escape the consequences of his actions just as we were closing in. That lying, spineless bastard, Amelia snarled, her hands clenched into white-knuckled fists. He's not getting away that easily. I drew in a shaky breath, forcing myself to remain calm. What do we do, Samantha? How do we stop him? There was a pause on the other end of the line, and I could almost picture Samantha weighing her options. We move forward with our plan, but we do it now, before he has a chance to disappear. We confront him, hit him with everything we've got, the evidence, the charges, all of it. We take away his ability to run. Amelia nodded, her jaw set in a hard line. Let's do it. I'll call Jenna, make sure she's on board. As I hung up the phone, a sense of determination washed over me. We were so close, so tantalizingly close to seeing Richard face the consequences of his actions. I couldn't, let him wriggle free, not after everything he'd put us through. The next few days were a whirlwind of activity as we finalized our plans. Jenna, her loyalty to Richard long since evaporated, agreed to testify against him, providing a damning first-hand account of his deception and manipulation. Finally, the day of reckoning arrived. As we made our way to Richard's office, the weight of the moment pressed down upon us like a physical force. This was it. the culmination of weeks of planning, of pain and anger, and a burning desire for justice. Samantha squeezed my arm reassuringly. "It's going to be okay," she murmured. "We've got this." I nodded, forcing a tight smile. "I know. It's time for Richard to face the music." As we stepped into the building, I could feel the storm gathering around us, the winds of change whipping at our backs. There was no turning back now. The only way out was through, and I was determined to see this through to the bitter end, no matter the cost. The tension in the air was palpable as we strode into Richard's office, our footsteps echoing like thunderclaps in the hushed stillness. Samantha took the lead, her shoulders squared and her gaze unwavering, while Amelia and I flanked her on either side, our faces set in grim determination. Richard looked up from his desk, his expression morphing from surprise to confusion to outright panic as he registered our presence. "Dana? Amelia? What's going on?" Before he could say another word, Samantha stepped forward, brandishing a thick manila envelope. "Richard Whittaker, you're under investigation for embezzlement, fraud, and adultery." The color drained from Richard's face as the weight of Samantha's words sank in. "What? That's absurd. You can't possibly believe these ridiculous accusations." Amelia's hands clenched into fists at her sides. "Cut the crap, Dad. We know everything. The lies, the cheating, the secret family. It's all over." Richard's eyes darted back and forth, his mind clearly racing to concoct some new web of deception. "Jenna told you, didn't she? That lying little bee?" "Don't you dare!" I cut him off, my voice trembling with barely contained fury. "Don't you dare try to pin this on Jenna or anyone else. This is your doing, Richard. Your lies, your betrayal." Samantha stepped forward again, her expression impassive. "We have irrefutable evidence of your misdeeds, Mr. Whittaker. Bank statements, financial records, eyewitness testimony, all of it points to a pattern of embezzlement and fraud stretching back years." Richard's face contorted in a snarl of rage. "You think you can take me down with some flimsy evidence and trumped-up charges? I'll bury you all in lawsuits, you hear me? This isn't over, not by a long shot." Amelia's laughter was cold and derisive. "Keep telling yourself that, Dad. Your days of lying and cheating are over. You're finished." As if on cue, the door to Richard's office burst open, and a trio of stern-faced security guards entered, flanked by 2 police officers. "Richard Whittaker, you're under arrest for embezzlement and fraud. You have the right to remain silent." The world seemed to slow as the officers approached, their movements deliberate and inexorable. Richard's mask of bravado crumbled, his eyes widening in panic as the gravity of the situation finally sank in. "No, wait, you don't understand," he sputtered, his hands raised in a futile gesture of surrender. "This is all a mistake. Dana, please, you have to believe me." But his pleas fell on deaf ears as the officers seized him, roughly spinning him around and snapping the handcuffs into place. As they led him away, his gaze met mine, and for a fleeting moment I saw a glimmer of the man I had once loved, the man who had promised to cherish and protect me, the man who had sworn to love me until the end of time. Then the moment passed, and all I saw was a stranger, a man consumed by greed and selfishness, a man who had sacrificed everything for his own twisted desires. And in that instant, I knew that the Richard what had loved was gone, lost forever in the tangled web of his own lies. As the door swung shut behind him, a profound silence descended upon the room, broken only by the faint sound of Amelia's ragged breathing. We had done it. We had brought Richard Whittaker to his knees, exposed his lies for the world to see. But even as a sense of grim satisfaction washed over me, I couldn't help but wonder if the price we had paid was too high. Had our quest for vengeance cost us more than we could ever hope to regain? Only time would tell. In the aftermath of Richard's arrest, a surreal calm settled over our lives. After the whirlwind of emotions and the relentless pursuit of justice, the sudden stillness felt almost suffocating. Amelia and I sat in silence, staring at the now empty space where Richard's presence had once loomed large. It was as if a weight had been lifted from our shoulders, but in its place lingered a hollow ache, the echoes of a life we had once known, now forever altered. "Do you think it was worth it?" Amelia asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I considered her question, turning it over in my mind like a puzzle with no clear solution. "I don't know," I admitted finally. "Part of me feels like we did the right thing, that he got what he deserved, but another part, My voice trailed off, the words catching in my throat. Amelia nodded, her expression somber. Yeah, I know what you mean. In the days that followed, we learned the full extent of Richard's betrayal. The embezzlement charges alone were staggering, with evidence suggesting he had siphoned off hundreds of thousands of dollars from his company over the years. But it was the personal revelations that cut deepest. The secret bank accounts, the hidden assets, the paper trail of lies that stretched back nearly a decade. Jenna, it seemed, had been just one in a long line of mistresses, a mere footnote in Richard's sordid chronicle of infidelity. And poor Lucas, that innocent child caught in the crossfire of his father's selfish actions, was left to pick up the pieces of a life he had never asked for. As the media frenzy swirled around us, Amelia and I retreated into ourselves, seeking solace in the quiet moments away from the prying eyes and endless questions. We had sacrificed so much in our pursuit of vengeance, and now that the dust had settled, we were left to confront the consequences of our choices. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of crimson and gold, there was a knock at the door. I opened it to find Jenna standing on the doorstep, her eyes rimmed with tears. "Dana," she said, her voice thick with emotion, "I just wanted to say thank you for everything." I blinked, taken aback by her unexpected gratitude. "Jenna, I don't know what to say." She shook her head, a sad smile tugging at the corners of her mouth. "You gave me the strength to break free, to see Richard for the monster he truly is. I'll never be able to repay that debt." As she turned to leave, I found my voice once more. "Jenna, wait." She paused, her eyes questioning. "What will you do now?" I asked. "With Lucas, I mean?" Jenna's expression hardened, a steely resolve settling over her features. "I'll raise him to be a better man than his father, to know the value of honesty, loyalty, and integrity. Richard may have given him life, but I'll make sure he never inherits his father's sins." With those words, she was gone, disappearing into the gathering dusk as abruptly as she had arrived. As I watched her retreating figure, I couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope amidst the lingering sadness and regret. Perhaps in the end our quest for vengeance had achieved something greater than mere retribution. Perhaps, by exposing Richard's lies and holding him accountable, we had created a ripple effect, a chance for others like Jenna and Lucas to break free from the chains of his deception and forge a better path forward. As the last rays of sunlight faded, casting long shadows across the room, I realized that our journey was far from over. The road ahead would be long and arduous, paved with difficult choices and painful realizations. But for the first time in what felt like an eternity, I allowed myself to believe that we might just make it through. Battered and bruised, perhaps, but stronger for having weathered the storm. The weeks following Richard's arrest were a whirlwind of chaos and change. As the legal proceedings ground on, Amelia and I found ourselves thrust into the harsh glare of the media spotlight, our private lives suddenly laid bare for the world to dissect and analyze. Through it all, we clung to each other, a united front against the storm of scrutiny and judgment that seemed to rage endlessly around us. Samantha, our steadfast ally, guided us through the legal quagmire, her unwavering presence a constant source of strength and support. "It won't be easy," she warned us, her expression grave. "Richard's lawyers will fight tooth and nail to discredit you, to paint you as vindictive and irrational. You need to be prepared for that." Amelia's jaw clenched, her eyes burning with a fierce determination. "Let them try. We have the truth on our side, and that's all that matters." As the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, the weight of our decision began to take its toll. The sleepless nights, the endless questioning, the constant reminder of the life we had lost, it all threatened to crush us beneath its unbearable weight. But through it all, we persevered, buoyed by an unshakable belief that we had done the right thing. Richard's web of lies had been unraveled, his carefully constructed facade torn down brick by brick. He would face the consequences of his actions, no matter how long or arduous the road ahead might be. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the day of reckoning arrived. Richard, his once confident demeanor replaced by a pallid, haunted expression, stood before the judge, his fate hanging in the balance. As the charges were read aloud, embezzlement, fraud, adultery, A hush fell over the courtroom. Even the most seasoned journalists and legal experts seemed taken aback by the sheer magnitude of his misdeeds. Amelia and I sat in the front row, our hands clasped together in a silent show of solidarity. Jenna was there too, her eyes fixed on Richard with a mixture of anger and pity. When the verdict was finally announced, guilty on all counts, a collective gasp rippled through the room. Richard's shoulders slumped, his head bowing in defeat as the weight of his sins finally came crashing down upon him. In the aftermath, as the media circus swirled around us once more, Amelia and I found ourselves clinging to each other, tears of relief and sorrow mingling on our cheeks. "It's over," Amelia whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "It's finally over." I nodded, my throat constricted by a torrent of conflicting emotions. The road ahead was still shrouded in uncertainty, but for the first time in what felt like an eternity, I could see a glimmer of light at the end of the tunnel. In the days and weeks that followed, we began to piece our lives back together, one fragile step at a time. Jenna, her custody of Lucas secured, reached out to us, and an unlikely bond of understanding began to form. We were survivors, united by the scars of Richard's betrayal, but determined to forge a new path forward. As for Richard, his fate was sealed. A lengthy prison sentence, his once promising future reduced to a mere footnote in the annals of his own hubris and greed. But even as the world around us moved on, the echoes of our ordeal lingered, a constant reminder of the price we had paid for justice. The road to healing would be long and arduous, paved with difficult choices and painful realizations. Yet, as I stood on the precipice of this new chapter, I couldn't help but feel a sense of hope, a belief that, no matter how dark the night might seem, the dawn would eventually break, ushering in a new era of peace and redemption. For in the end, that was the true legacy of our quest for vengeance. Not the destruction of one man, but the reclamation of our own strength, our own resilience, our own indomitable spirit. And as the first rays of sunlight peeked over the horizon, casting a warm glow across the room, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, we would face them together, united in our determination to forge a brighter future, one built on the ashes of the past, but rising ever higher toward the promise of a new dawn.